So that's basically, things at a more body level. But then there's also, at a psychological level or mind level. And then there's a lot of different, schools of thought. In fact, even when you are taking a prescription medication, it is recommended that you implement one of these psychological, techniques and programs in conjunction with the medications, because it's proven to be much more effective. So hypnotherapy is obviously one of them. In fact, the aware method that you're describing, you used to listen to like a 25-minute hypnotherapy, right? And so hypnotherapy is really, really effective. And basically, for the longest time, scientists believe that our brains are kind of hardwired after childhood. They don't really change. But then there's this really interesting phenomenon that, thanks to, imaging technology, we're able to kind of observe and see and study, is that, something called neuroplasticity, which is that your brain is not hardwired into a specific brain for the rest of your life. It can actually rewire itself. It can change itself over time. And this directly affects, specific neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and different hormones and basically the biochemistry of your brain. And there's this really interesting study, actually, you told me about it, with the London cab drivers. And, this is one of the most profound studies that actually present supporting evidence for neuroplasticity. So basically, with London cab drivers, they have to take this really extensive test. They can't just rely on their GPS systems. They have to take this test where they have to memorize all the names of the streets in the whole city. And there's so many different streets, the different events, the different statues and the different structures.
Everything. And it's a real pass and fail type exam. Yeah. It's one of the hardest tests in the world, apparently.
Yeah, wow.
And they want to do that because they want that authentic London cab driver experience. So the government's kind of like that about it. But go on.
Yeah. So basically what they found was that, 2 years after they studied for that exam, their hippocampi are much, much larger than the average person. In fact, London cab drivers have some of the largest hippocampi, and therefore their brains are bigger too, have some of the largest hippocampi in the world. And your hippocampus is associated with memory and learning. And so it's pretty profound. That's evidence of neuroplasticity right there, that your brain can change and rewire itself because now your memory is much better. Your learning capabilities are much better because your hippocampus has significantly increased in size. So basically it, comes back to the study of rewiring neurocircuitry in your brain to stop creating different emotional responses. And this is where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. So this is one of the most effective psychotherapies for anxiety. And it involves, kind of studying your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And so your thoughts affect how you feel and act. Your feelings affect how you think and act, and your behaviors affect how you think and feel. So you're basically kind of rewiring everything in there. So now you have a different emotional response to a thought, and you have a different behavioral response to an emotion, and you have a different behavioral response for a thought, and it's this whole cycle where each factor affects every other factor. So basically what you're doing is you're recircuiting all the wiring. And so basically, you're breaking habits essentially in, years and years and years of conditioning. But it's very, very effective. And for most people, they, for example, let's just say that I was bit by a dog when I was 2 years old, hypothetically speaking. I now in my adulthood have an extreme fear of dogs, right? And so not even having a dog in my physical presence, but even the thought of a dog can, make me feel really, really anxious. And so what most people do is avoid the thought, avoid any place where I could see a dog or run into a dog, and avoid anything that is related to dogs, right? But what research shows is that avoidance actually adds to the anxiety. So now you're feeling more and more anxious each time you think of a dog. Wow. And so basically with cognitive behavior therapy, you're accepting the possibility and accepting the thought. So, you're basically saying, okay, you're teaching your brain that you're not going to feel anxious. In fact, you're not even going to say, I'm not going to feel anxious, because that's putting pressure on yourself. But you're saying, okay, I can think of a dog and sit still for 5 minutes and be okay. Mm-hmm. So, and then you sit there for 5 minutes, and then you keep gradually increasing the time. And what happens is that because you're responding to it differently, your behavior when it comes to dogs change, your emotional response changes, and your thoughts change. So you're basically reconditioning your mind to not be scared of dogs anymore. And this can work with any situation or any entity that can create fear.